Welcome, dear listeners, to a tale that will tug at your heartstrings and tickle your funny bone. Before we dive in, if you enjoy what you hear, consider subscribing to our channel for more captivating narratives. Now, let me take you to a quaint little town where our story unfolds. In the heart of this town lives Evelyn, a woman whose life is as rich and complex as the tapestry of her family's history. But lately, shadows of doubt and whispers of the past have begun to cloud her days. It all started with a mirror said to hold secrets, perhaps even a touch of magic. But as Evelyn will soon discover, the true magic lies not in reflections, but in the bonds we share with those we love. Join me as we unravel the mystery of The Witch's Mirror, Evelyn's descent into madness, a story of love, laughter, and the occasional misunderstanding. I sat in my cozy living room, surrounded by photographs that told a story of my life. There was the black and white picture from my wedding day, standing beside my late husband, Henry, both of us grinning like the world was ours. Another frame captured my 3 children as toddlers, their chubby cheeks smeared with cake. And then the newer ones, my grandkids, with their bright eyes and cheeky smiles frozen in time. But that day, as I looked at those pictures, a heaviness settled in my chest. The house, once alive with noise and chaos, now felt too quiet. My kids had grown up, moved out, built their own lives. Visits were rare, and when they happened, they often ended in shouting matches or awkward silences. Take last Christmas. It was supposed to be a warm family reunion, but it turned into a mess. My eldest, Margaret, snapped at her brother, Tom, over something so small I can't even recall it. My youngest, Susan, barely looked up from her phone. The grandkids tried to cheer us up with their silly antics, but even that couldn't fix the tension. I sighed, brushing my fingers over a photo of Henry and me. "Oh, Henry," I whispered, "if only you were here, you'd know what to do." A sharp knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. I smoothed my dress and opened it to find Mrs. Abernathy, the neighborhood busybody, standing there with a gleam in her eye. "Good morning, Evelyn," she chirped. "I heard you got an old mirror from your aunt. Is it true?" "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. "It came yesterday. It's interesting." "Interesting, huh?" "I know a thing or two about that mirror. They say it belonged to a witch." I laughed, though it came out shaky. "A witch? Come on, Mrs. Abernathy. That's ridiculous." She shrugged, leaning closer. "Believe what you want, but folks say it can show you things, secrets, maybe even your future. Some say it'll drive you mad." A chill ran through me, but I brushed it off. "It's just an old heirloom. Nothing spooky about it." She nodded, though her smirk said she wasn't buying it. "Just watch yourself, dear. The past has a way of sneaking up." After she left, her words stuck with me. I wandered over to the mirror, now hanging in the corner. It was beautiful, carved vines and flowers curling around a tarnished silver frame. I stared into it, seeing my own reflection. Tired eyes, a few more lines than I'd like. But for a split second, I swear I saw something move, a shadow. Maybe. I blinked, and it was gone. "Getting old and jumpy," I muttered, shaking my head. That night, my daughter Margaret called. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice tight. "I wanted to talk about Thanksgiving. Maybe we should skip the big gathering this year." My stomach dropped. "Why?" "After last Christmas, I just think it's better to avoid the hassle. Tom and I aren't exactly chatting, and Susan's always distracted." "But it's Thanksgiving," I protested, gripping the phone. "We should be together." "I know, Mom, but maybe we all need a break from the drama." When the call ended, I felt like I'd been punched. My family was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. Lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the mirror. Mrs. Abernathy's warning echoed in my head. Was there something to it? Could it help me fix this mess? Little did I know, that mirror was about to drag me and my whole family into a whirlwind I'd never have seen coming. The days following Margaret's call felt heavier than usual. Evelyn tried to keep busy, watering the plants, dusting the shelves, even baking a batch of cookies that sat untouched on the counter, a silent testament to her solitude. But no matter what she did, her eyes kept drifting back to the mirror. It stood in the corner of the living room, its silver frame catching the light in a way that felt almost alive. One afternoon, as she folded laundry on the couch, she caught a glimpse of herself in the glass. She looked tired, lines etched deeper into her face than she remembered. But there was something else. For a fleeting second, her reflection seemed to move out of sync with her, a subtle twitch of the head that she hadn't made. She blinked, and it was gone. Just my imagination, she told herself, though a shiver ran down her spine, cold and unyielding. That evening, the phone rang, piercing the quiet. It was Margaret, her eldest daughter. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked, her voice threaded with concern. "I'm fine, dear," Evelyn replied, forcing a smile into her tone as if Margaret could see it. "Just a bit tired." "You sound distant. Is something bothering you?" Evelyn hesitated. How could she explain the unease that gnawed at her, the way the mirror seemed to watch her every move? Margaret would think she was losing her grip. "It's nothing really. Just missing Henry, I suppose." Margaret sighed, a sound heavy with exasperation. "We all miss Dad, but you can't let it consume you. Maybe you should get out more, join a club or something." "I'll think about it," Evelyn said, though the words felt hollow. The conversation ended with strained pleasantries, leaving her with the familiar ache of distance between them. Just as she settled into her armchair with a cup of tea, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find her grandson, Timmy, standing there, his 6-year-old face lit with a mischievous grin. His mother, Susan, waved from the car in the driveway, her expression a mix of apology and haste. "Grandma, I brought you a drawing." Timmy thrust a crayon masterpiece into her hands, a stick figure family holding hands under a bright yellow sun, their smiles wide and carefree. "Oh, Timmy, it's beautiful," Evelyn exclaimed, pulling him into a hug. His laughter was a burst of sunlight in her shadowed world, a brief reprieve from the weight pressing down on her. "Can I have a cookie?" he asked, eyes wide with hope. "Of course, sweetheart." She led him to the kitchen, where he happily munched on a chocolate chip cookie, chattering about schoolyard battles and imaginary dragons. For a moment, everything felt normal again, warm, familiar, safe. But as Timmy waved goodbye and Susan's car disappeared down the street, the house fell silent once more. The mirror loomed larger in the corner, its presence impossible to ignore. Evelyn tried to focus on Timmy's drawing, pinning it to the fridge with a small smile. Yet a nagging thought clawed at her. Why does the mirror make me feel so watched? That night, as she prepared for bed, she passed the mirror again. She couldn't resist the pull to look. Standing before it, she studied her reflection, a woman in her nightgown, hair graying at the temples, eyes weary but kind. She searched the glass for answers, for some hint of what unsettled her so deeply. Then, without warning, the image shifted. Her reflection's mouth twisted into a cruel, unnatural smile, and her eyes, her own eyes, turned pitch black, like twin voids swallowing the light. Evelyn gasped, stumbling backward, her hand flying to her chest. When she dared to look again, it was just her, wide-eyed, pale, trembling. "It's just stress," she whispered, her voice shaky in the stillness. "You're imagining things." But the lie rang hollow. Something was wrong with that mirror, something dark, something dangerous. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to move it, to cover it, to cast it out. It was as if it had sunk invisible hooks into her, whispering secrets she wasn't ready to hear. Climbing into bed, she couldn't shake the image of those black eyes. Sleep came in fits, plagued by dreams of shadows and murmurs she couldn't quite decipher. When morning broke, she woke with a knot of dread in her stomach, knowing the mirror was still there, waiting. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly in Detective Sarah Lawson's cramped office as she spread the case files across her desk. It was well past midnight in the small town of Havenwood, where 3 people had vanished without a trace over the past month. Sleep was a distant dream. Every tick of the clock reminded her that time was slipping away and she had no solid leads. Rubbing her tired eyes, Sarah picked up a photograph from the latest crime scene. A modest living room, frozen in chaos with an overturned chair and a shattered vase. Her gaze drifted over the image, searching for anything she might have missed. Then, something caught her attention, a small, ornate key hanging on a hook near the fireplace. It was too intricate, too deliberate, for such an ordinary setting. Frowning, she flipped through the other photos. There it was again in the background of the second crime scene, and once more in the third. A chill crept up her spine. How had she overlooked this? 3 disappearances, 3 photos, 1 recurring detail. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a clue. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Could the key be a signature, a taunt from the perpetrator? Or was it something the victims had in common? She needed answers, and she needed them fast. Grabbing her coat, she decided to head to the town's historical society. If anyone could shed light on an antique key, it would be the local historian. The streets of Havenwood were silent as she drove, the only sound the crunch of gravel beneath her tires. The historical society was a squat, weathered building on the edge of town, its windows dark. Sarah knocked, her breath misting in the cool night air. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing an elderly man with wire-rimmed glasses and a wary expression. "Mr. Thompson?" Sarah asked, holding up her badge. "I'm Detective Lawson. I need your help with something tied to a case." The historian's eyes flickered with unease, but he stepped aside. "Come in, then. What's this about?" Inside, the office was a maze of books and dusty artifacts. Sarah pulled out the photographs and pointed to the key in each one. "This key. It shows up at every crime scene. Do you recognize it?" Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses and studied the images. Looks like a Victorian-era skeleton key. Rare, certainly. They were often custom-made, tied to specific locks or properties. Any idea where this one might come from? Sarah pressed. He hesitated, his gaze darting to the side. There are stories. Old rumors about a key linked to the Hawthorne mansion up on the hill. They say it opens hidden passages, but it's nonsense. Ghost tales to scare children. Sarah's pulse quickened. The Hawthorne mansion had been abandoned for decades, a crumbling relic overlooking Havenwood. Could it be connected to the disappearances? What kind of stories? Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably. Folks claimed the key led to a secret room where strange things happened. But that's all I know. The mansion's been empty since the last Hawthorne died. Before Sarah could dig deeper, he stood abruptly. "Excuse me a moment," he muttered, and shuffled out of the room. Suspicious, Sarah waited a beat before following quietly. She heard a door click shut down the hallway and approached it cautiously. Turning the knob, she stepped into a small storage room. Empty, except for a rug slightly askew. A faint creak came from below. Kneeling, she lifted the rug and found a trapdoor. Her heart pounded as she pulled it open and descended the narrow stairs into the basement. The air was thick with dampness and the scent of old earth. At the bottom, a flicker of light spilled from behind a stack of crates. Moving closer, she spotted a hidden door, slightly ajar. With her hand on her gun, Sarah pushed it open and stepped into a dimly lit room. The walls were etched with strange, spiraling symbols, and in the center stood an altar-like table, its surface stained with dark streaks. Candles flickered weakly, casting long shadows. A movement in the corner snapped her attention. "Who's there?" she demanded, drawing her weapon. A figure stepped forward, and Sarah's breath caught. It was Detective Mark Reynolds, her former partner, presumed dead after vanishing 2 years ago during an undercover sting. His face was gaunt, his eyes haunted. "Mark," she whispered, shock rooting her in place. "Sarah," he rasped, glancing nervously around. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe." "What is this place? What's going on?" Her voice trembled with a mix of relief and confusion. "There's no time," he said urgently. "You need to leave, now." Before she could demand answers, a loud crash echoed from above, followed by the heavy thud of footsteps descending the stairs. Sarah tightened her grip on her gun, her eyes locked on Mark's pale face as the room seemed to close in around them. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple as shadows stretched across the quiet streets. Inside the aging Victorian house on Elm Street, Clara sat at the kitchen table, her fingers absently tracing the rim of a half-empty coffee mug. Sleep had been a stranger to her for days, ever since the odd occurrences began. Creaking floorboards in the dead of night, faint whispers that seemed to seep from the walls, and now, the disappearance of her grandmother's locket. That locket wasn't just jewelry, it was a tether to her past, a gift handed down with love. Its absence left a hollow ache in her chest. Detective Harris sat across from her, his notepad open, pen poised. "You're absolutely sure no one else has been in the house?" His tone was calm, but a flicker of skepticism danced in his eyes. Clara shook her head, her dark hair falling into her face. "No one. I live alone, and I lock the doors every night. It's like it just vanished." Harris scribbled a note, his brow creasing. "And you didn't misplace it? Maybe left it in another room?" "I've searched everywhere," Clara said, her voice sharpening with frustration. "It was on my dresser last night. This morning, it was gone." With a sigh, the detective closed his notepad. "I'll file a report, but without evidence of a break-in, there's little I can do. Could be you overlooked it somewhere." Clara's jaw tightened. She wasn't imagining things. The locket wasn't the first item to disappear. Over the past few weeks, small things had gone missing. A book from the shelf, a photograph from the mantel, even a spoon from the kitchen drawer. But the locket? That was personal. That was different. As Harris stood to leave, Clara's phone buzzed on the table. A text from her brother, Tom. "Hey, just checking in. You okay?" She typed back quickly. "Fine. Just tired." But the lie felt heavy on her fingertips. She wasn't fine. Something was wrong, gnawing at her from the edges of her perception. Later that evening, Clara sat in the living room, the house wrapped in an unsettling silence. She tried to lose herself in the pages of a book, but her thoughts kept circling back to the locket. It wasn't just its absence that unnerved her. It was the growing sense that she wasn't alone, that unseen eyes followed her every move. A sharp knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. She wasn't expecting visitors. Heart-thudding, she crossed the room and peered through the peephole. It was Mrs. Jenkins, her elderly neighbor, whose love of gossip was matched only by her knack for showing up unannounced. Clara opened the door, forcing a tight smile. "Hello, Mrs. Jenkins. What's up?" The older woman's eyes darted nervously, her hands twisting together. "I saw something last night, dear. Thought you ought to know." A knot formed in Clara's stomach. "What did you see?" Mrs. Jenkins leaned closer, her voice dropping to a hushed whisper. "A figure lurking near your house. It was late, midnight, maybe. They were standing by your window for a long time." Clara's breath caught. "Did you see who it was?" "No, too dark," Mrs. Jenkins said, shaking her head. "But it didn't look normal. It was like they were fading in and out, like a shadow." Clara frowned, unease prickling her skin. "Fading? What do you mean?" "It's hard to put into words," Mrs. Jenkins admitted, her voice trembling slightly. It was as if they weren't fully there. Clara's mind raced. Could this be tied to the missing items? The noises? She thanked Mrs. Jenkins and shut the door, her pulse hammering in her ears. That night, Clara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as shadows played across the walls. Sleep remained out of reach, chased away by every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside. The feeling of being watched had grown stronger, a weight pressing against her chest. A soft thud echoed from downstairs. Clara bolted upright, her breath hitching. She held still, ears straining. There it was again, a faint shuffling, like footsteps on the hardwood floor. With shaking hands, she grabbed the baseball bat she kept by her bedside. She wasn't about to cower in her own home. Slipping out of bed, she crept down the stairs, The bat clutched tightly, her bare feet silent against the cold steps. The living room was cloaked in darkness, lit only by the dim glow of a street lamp filtering through the curtains. Clara scanned the space, her eyes darting to every corner. Then she saw it, a shadow, swift and fleeting, streaking across the wall. "Who's there?" she called, her voice quivering despite her effort to sound firm. Silence answered. She took a step forward, heart pounding against her ribs. The shadow shifted again, slipping toward the kitchen. Gripping the bat tighter, Clara followed, her nerves taut as a wire. She stepped into the kitchen and froze. There, on the table, sat her locket, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. It hadn't been there hours ago. Next to it lay a note, written in elegant looping script. "You're not alone." Ice flooded Clara's veins. She whirled around, expecting to see someone lurking behind her, but the room was empty. The house was still, the silence pressing in like a living thing. Detective Sarah Lawson stared at the crumpled note in her hand, the words scrawled in haste. "Warehouse on Old Mill Road. Hurry." The anonymous tip had come through the station's tip line just an hour ago, and now she stood at the edge of Ravenwood's abandoned industrial district. The setting sun cast long shadows across the cracked pavement, painting the scene in hues of orange and gray. She took a deep breath, the cool air sharp in her lungs, and stepped forward. The warehouse loomed ahead, its boarded-up windows and graffiti-streaked walls giving it an air of menace. It was the kind of place that screamed stay away, but Sarah wasn't one to back down from a lead, no matter how ominous. The door was slightly ajar when she reached it. She paused, straining her ears for any sound, but all she caught was the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of leaves in the wind. With a gentle push, the door creaked open, revealing a cavernous interior cloaked in dust and shadow. Sarah stepped inside, her footsteps echoing off the concrete floor. The air hung heavy with the stench of mildew and decay. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light, picking out signs of recent activity. Footprints smudged in the dust, a discarded water bottle, a coil of rope in the corner. Someone had been here, and not long ago. Her heart thudded as she ventured deeper, her hand resting on the grip of her service weapon. She knew she should have called for backup, but the urgency of the tip had driven her to act alone. Reckless, maybe, but instinct had gotten her this far. A noise broke the silence, a faint scuffle, like someone shifting their weight. Sarah froze, every sense on high alert. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her. "Nothing." She took another step, and then she saw it, a figure darting behind a stack of crates. "Stop," she shouted, drawing her gun. But the figure vanished into the shadows as quickly as it had appeared. Sarah gave chase, her boots pounding against the floor. She rounded the corner, but the space was empty. No exits, no hiding spots, just bare walls and dust. How was that possible? Frustration clawed at her, but she shoved it aside. Focus. She holstered her weapon and scanned the area more carefully. That's when she spotted it, a small, leather-bound journal tucked beneath a loose floorboard. She pried it free, her fingers trembling slightly as she flipped it open. The pages were a mess of handwritten notes, dates, locations, names. Names she recognized, the missing persons from Ravenwood. Her breath caught. This was it, the breakthrough she'd been chasing for weeks. But as she turned the pages, a chill snaked down her spine. The last entry, dated 2 days ago, read, "Detective Lawson is getting too close. Time to move to the next phase." Her blood ran cold. They knew her name. They were watching her. She slipped the journal into her pocket and reached for her phone to call for backup. The screen glowed back at her. No signal. She cursed under her breath. She needed to get out, get this to the lab, figure out who was behind this. As she turned to leave, a faint whisper slithered through the darkness. "You're not alone." Sarah froze, her hand snapping back to her gun. "Who's there?" she demanded, louder this time. No answer, just the echo of her own voice. Heart hammering, she edged toward the entrance, every shadow seeming to twist and shift in the corner of her eye. When she finally stepped outside, The cool night air hit her face like a slap. She gulped it down, trying to steady her nerves. The journal burned a hole in her pocket. It was evidence, proof that the disappearances were connected, that someone was orchestrating this nightmare. But more than that, it was a warning. Whoever was behind this knew she was closing in, and they weren't about to let her walk away unscathed.